As the league celebrates Black History Month, it's time to focus on Wayne Embry's pioneering career. After playing a career that included 5 All-Star selections and a title with the Celtics, the Hall of Famer became the first African-American general manager in league history when the Bucks hired him in 1972. He later joined the Cavaliers as an executive and team president, and recently Griff sat down with his Cavaliers predecessor.
History would dictate pretty much what we could and couldn't do growing up in the 40s and 50s. And there were a lot of times when I would become discouraged. But my parents, my family would always say to me, don't become discouraged, make history.
For all of your contributions to sport, as the first African-American general manager, what do you look back on now with the most pride in your career, Wayne?
Well, you know, I have a great deal of pride in what we've been able to accomplish. And I had no intention of being a general manager years ago when it happened. I was just content with being a player and went into broadcasting.
Yeah.
And the owner of the Bucks came back and asked me to come to Milwaukee and be part of the front office. A year later, he called me to his office, said, you're the new general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks. It didn't resonate at first that I was the first. And so, of course, media and that made a big thing about that. And they said, well, you see any significance behind it? And I said, only if it is significant to others, because I got a job to do. And I'm going to do the very best that I can. And so if it's significant to others, then hopefully, you know, it'll inspire others. You know, it was pretty tenuous at times, and as you well know, a lot of hard work, and got to persevere through a lot. But I have a great deal of pride.
So a native son of New Carlisle, Ohio.
Yeah.
There's a stretch of the interstate there called Wayne Embry Way. Growing up when you did during the Civil Rights Movement, and a prime of your career, quite frankly, that intersects with all of Dr. King's teachings and all of Dr. King's speeches and everything that's been central to the Civil Rights Movement. What is it like for you now to look back on everything that you played through and everything that you had to overcome to get where you did today?
At the time, you know, we did what we could do. We as African Americans did what we were allowed to do. And I look back at the times when being the only African American on my high school team and then the entire high school, going into restaurants and being told you can't be served, and going to movies, told you couldn't go. And it was just, you know, at the time we accepted it. Now looking back, I become quite emotional about that as well because it was humiliating. And so in the 60s, when Dr. King started the Civil Rights Movement, he, of course, was the leader, and of course there were others who were involved. It was just gratifying to see that his efforts and the courage that he displayed to make the world a better place. I'd like to live with the inspiration he gave me and try to inspire others to move forward.
And because of everything you experienced and went through, you've been very vocal in your belief that NBA players and all athletes should use their platform for social activism. That's something that's very important to you.
Well, I think that we all are human beings who have a right to think and exercise the First Amendment right to speak. And so if you have a belief, I think you should express it and be an inspiration to young people as long as it's the right way. And of course the right way is a way to promote love and respect and try to avoid disrespect and the hatred we still see remnants of today.
How do you think we can, as a league, continue to help educate players today if the sacrifice players in your day took to make this possible for them? How do we improve understanding of that?
Well, I think they understand. There's more and more. I think more so when they get exposure to Bill Russell and myself and Oscar and some of the old-time players. I think they get it. Back in our day, all we wanted to do was belong. You know, we don't want to take anything from anybody. We just want equal opportunity to display our abilities and what we could do. I think that which we went through has certainly opened the door and paved the way for a lot of the young players and has brought the league to where it is today. But I think the players appreciate it.
Having spent just a little time around Wayne Embry, I'm always struck by his sort of quiet dignity and pride with which he carries himself. Well, what did you take away from that conversation?
Yeah, I felt the same, and I've known Wayne for probably 20 years, and getting to know him even more as I did going through this process, the thing that really stood out to me, and the interview took place in Memphis as part of the 14th Annual Sports Legacy Awards for the National Civil Rights Museum. And he's lived and led in Dr. King's spirit of inclusion his entire career. It's not just something he talks about. He's been at the forefront of, and as his time as a consultant in Toronto, they've been at the forefront of all inclusion in their hiring practices, hiring the first African general manager in Masai Ujiri, having a big role in hiring the first senior female executive, Teresa Resch, who's their vice president of basketball operations and player development. It's who he is, and it's who he's always been.
Coach, he hired you in Cleveland.
How lucky and blessed have I been in my career? I want you to think about this for a second. My first general manager was Stan Kasten. He was not only the general manager for the Hawks, but also for the Atlanta Braves.
Braves, right.
And he's the guy who put the Dodger deal together when they were being sold and brought the owners in, one of which is Magic, okay, and has that franchise doing pretty well. Then I move on to the Hall of Famer Wayne Embry, who hired me in Cleveland, and then I move on to the Hall of Famer and the logo, Jerry West. So to go from Kasten to Embry to West, and Wayne Embry is, as you said, there's a special dignity about him. There's a great pride within. He gets his job done and does it in his way. And he was just great to be able to go in the office every day, to sit down and talk basketball. And he would talk basketball for hours if you wanted to tell you how we got to where we are now from where he was.
It's an impressive list of colleagues and bosses, and it makes me wonder how you got stuck with me.
Lucky once again.
For more interviews and features celebrating Black History Month, go to NBA.com. It's the luck of the draw, Czar. 7-point, 13-rebound game as the Sixers put up 143 in a rout of the LA Lakers, if that does anything for you. And looking awfully good so far offensively with Tobias Harris in the lineup in 2 games. Celtics Sixers is game 1 of the players-only doubleheader on TNT. You will hear from Jim Jackson, among others, on that broadcast. And let's talk about Harris now. Just 2 games in, what kind of an impact has he made on this Philly team?
I mean, it's been amazing seamlessly for him to fit in, because 2 things he does extremely well. One is put the ball in the basket, but also he's a willing passer and probably a better defender than what I think Brett Brown and the coaching staff thought. I mean, for him to come in and kind of play the kind of game that he's been able to play, to shoot the basketball, to feel comfortable with his teammates and not take away, but also just add a potent offensive player, I think just shows the skill set. I think it has to do a lot more with this too, guys. The opportunity to compete for a championship maybe this year fuels the energy a little bit more, and you can see a different bounce in the step now that he's here in Philly.
Jimmy, have you talked to Coach Brown today at all about the struggles they've had, particularly against Boston? And specifically, J.J. Redick seems like he's had a tough time making shots against this group. What are they looking at doing differently tonight?
I mean, that's a great question, because in the past, what Boston was able to do was push up, especially on J.J. Redick, and force him to be a dribbler. But when you add the component of what they've brought in personnel-wise, okay, now I think it opens up the floor a little bit more. You're going to see a lot more of J.J., again, running off of those screens, trying to catch and shoot. Tobias Harris adds another component, because before you could help off a little bit more, but with Tobias Harris on the court, that adds another score that you had to put eyes on. So I do think it will open it up for JJ to get some cleaner looks. Again, they want to force JJ to put it on the floor. He's shown that he can do it in the past. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Boston, if they switch up how they guard JJ based on Tobias Harris in the starting lineup.
Hey, Jimmy, you're talking about Tobias Harris. Let's not forget another youngster out there who plays a similar position in Tatum, and that could be quite a matchup tonight. And I'm wondering, are they going to go head-to-head with matchups, or do you think that they might cross-match somehow?
On which one? I didn't hear the last part of it.
Tatum versus Harris. Tatum versus Harris.
Oh, to Harris, I think they go straight up. I mean, it's even two. I think the double team that you're going to see a lot more probably is Embiid, just because Baines is not in the lineup. But you know, they want to play straight up. I mean, I think that's the key for both teams, because one thing you don't want to do, and I think both coaches talk about this, guys, is overhelp. Okay, you got to know when you have a guy under control and when you need to help, and that's the thing that both coaches are emphasizing. That yes, we want to give help. Somebody gets beat, step in, but let's not overhelp, commit early, and give up open three-point shots.
Jim, whether it's to keep their assets for the summertime or because they believe in their roster, a good one as it stands, the Celtics stood pat at the deadline, as you know.
Yeah.
What will be the difference between them being the 4th or 5th best team in the East, which is currently the case, or potentially reaching the NBA Finals this spring?
Well, first of all, it has nothing to do with basketball. It has to do with the attitude within the locker room. I mean, this is a team that is talented as anybody, but at the same time, you have some friction. And not like this team doesn't like each other as, you know, personally, but they're not on the same page from a communication perspective. And I think you also have to ask.
Jim Jackson with us from the TNT Players Only broadcast tonight at the top of the hour. We'll see you then.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
That's an interesting thought from Jim on what is going to determine how far this team goes, and he says it's not necessarily a talent or even a basketball thing. How much does Brad Stevens have to navigate here down the stretch?
Yeah, I think we said spiritually sullied earlier.
Yes.
It's a fascinating thing when you get to this level. The only thing that marks success for this Boston Celtics franchise is a finals appearance. And frankly, I think they won't be satisfied unless they win it. And I think when that's the case, everybody has to be pulling in the same direction. There is no margin for error there in terms of buy-in. And your biggest challenge as a coach of a team like this is to get everyone to buy in, even when they're difficult, star-like personalities. It's what made Ty Lue so special good. He never got any of the credit because it was all going to LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love, but he got everyone to buy into their role on the team. It's critical when you're trying to win a championship.
So, Coach, how do you do that, particularly with a really deep roster and a lot of guys who know they could play more minutes and produce more on other clubs?
I was just about to say, think about what Brad Stevens has gone through. He comes into the NBA for the first time, and they're asking him to, let's build a program. So there are no expectations. He's got players, some of them happy to be there, you know, in the NBA. And then the process takes place of starting to build, starting to win, winning more each year than you did the year before, and then you get to the playoffs, and then you go far in the playoffs, all the way to the conference finals, and then you come back, and you've even got a better roster than you did at the end of last season with all these expectations, and now the egos start to take place here. And this is something new for him because he's never been in this situation before. So he has to manage these egos, the chemistry, at the same time do the great job that he's always done with the X's and O's part of it, and rally them back and somehow get them back together again.
Well, again, no Kyrie Irving tonight for the Celtics, so some extra shots up and available for the likes of Jason Tatum and the other young fellas, as well as Al Horford, and the rest as the Celtics take on the Sixers at the top of the hour.